we're not asking him to be anything but Kemba Walker. Like, just go out and, obviously he's excited to play. He's ready to play. They've put in a lot of work to get to this point. And, we're looking forward to having him out there.
We are live with Kemba's arrival. 12 games in, and for the first time since September 27th, Kemba Walker in the starting lineup, as the Celtics take on Julius Randle and the Knicks, who look to end their losing streak. We start your Sunday with Knicks Celtics live on NBA TV. It is the CarMax pregame show. It is Chicago-centric as we have a Northeast battle between the Celtics and the Knicks. We've got the Hall of Famer Isaiah Thomas, the future Hall of Famer Candace Parker, pair of champions, pair of Illinois' finest. I don't know how, this is a big day for me here to be working with both of you. Are you as excited as I am?
I am so excited. Like, two of my favorite people. Zeke, we wish you were here, but this is the next best thing. So I'm very excited for today.
We got to keep him in that box. Okay?
I definitely wish I was there also.
All right, guys.
And let me out of the box.
No, you stay right there, Isaiah. Let's get right to it. We start in about a half an hour from now with Knicks and Celtics, and we've got this big breaking news story. How much, listen, still no Jason Tatum and a couple of other guys who are still going through health and safety protocols, but the way Jaylen Brown's playing, to have Kemba Walker back, how much does this raise the ceiling for what the Celtics can be?
Well, we've seen what Kemba Walker did for them last year, and you've seen the way over his entire career, he is that guy at the end of the game that will get you the best shot. He is a closer. He is a guy that wants to step up in those big moments, and so to have him back, to be able to get him in rhythm and get him back handling the ball. I think that's been a problem for the Celtics this season, is guys that are able to create shots for others and not just themselves.
Isaiah, what does it mean?
When you talk about the big three right now in Brooklyn, that would be 1A. The big three in Boston is 1B. When you talk about Walker, Tatum, Brown out on the perimeter, the things that they're able to do defensively and offensively, they're not as offensively gifted as the big three in Brooklyn. However, this 1B is awfully good when they're clicking on all cylinders.
So just after 1 Eastern, we will have the Celtics looking to extend their 5-game win streak, taking on the Knicks, who are looking to end their 5-game losing streak. We'll dive deeper into this matchup coming up on the CarMax pregame show. But first, let's take a pause and get your thoughts on what we saw last night in Brooklyn with James Harden making his Nets debut. He got off to a bit of a bumpy start. Took a while for him to find his shot, but man, he was dishing out. For triple-double in his first game. Kevin Durant couldn't miss, Mr. Efficiency. I mean, what did you take from watching the Nets last night beat Orlando?
Well, for all those that are out there that have watched Houston play over the last couple years and have said they do not enjoy watching James Harden play, last night I enjoyed watching James Harden play. I mean, he came out and in a soundbite said, when you have great players, it's going to be fun to watch and it's going to be easy to play. He said he has no issue facilitating and passing the ball. And when you have a target as KD, right, who is a 7-foot sniper, he's going to average a triple-double. Kyrie's going to average a triple-double. I mean, it was so much fun watching them play. That pick and roll between James Harden and Kevin Durant that they run yesterday. How do you stop that? Do you switch it? Do you hedge? I mean, just I know they were playing Orlando, and maybe some people will say that, but at the end of the day, the way they looked yesterday, it was fun as a fan to just watch Brooklyn play.
And Isaiah, watching that game and seeing the open shots that Joe Harris and Bruce Brown and others got because of the attention these two drew last night was unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch Brooklyn play every night. They're must-see TV. And anytime you have three players with the skill level of Durant, Harden, and also Kyrie, I mean, it's, they're fun to watch individually, And then when you put them together collectively, not only their skill level is exciting, but also the brain power that they bring to the game. And as Candace knows, every defensive team, every defensive opponent is designed to stop, a Durant or Irvin or Harden. And what these players have been able to do over a period of years is be able to outwit the defense every single time. Just as when Candace goes into a game or I went into a game, you knew that you were playing against a defensive scheme that was designed to stop you. Well, these three guys know how to score, but intellectually they understand how to read and break down every defense that's been designed to stop them. So having those three collectively out on the floor together is going to be impressive, not only to watch from a skill standpoint, but also from how defensive schemes will try to stop them and how they will counteract it with their basketball IQ.
Isaiah, though, I think you left one thing out. That's the Nets could actually use Candace Parker to play some defense for them because Orlando looked like a powerhouse of the offensive end. I mean, you might be able to help
I'm a person that can speak anything is possible because at the beginning of my career, nobody would have thought,
you are
Isaiah included, that I would have been mentioned anywhere near defense. So anything is possible, Brooklyn. They do have to start playing defense, and I think that is a huge thing on the other end of the floor. Offensively, they're going to be able to score, so they're going to be able to set their defense. And I'm a firm believer in defense affecting offense and vice versa. But they're going to score a lot of points. So they're going to be able to get back and set their 5 defense back in transition, but they are going to have to stop somebody.
Well, right before we went on the air, you spilled your tea everywhere. Do you want to spill some actual tea? And you're a free agent, so, I mean, why don't you just say
Zeke,
you're going
that's
to
what we're
Brooklyn
doing right now?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing? This is NBA. We're talking NBA here.
I mean,
Hey. That's why that shield and that glass is up there, Candace. Not necessarily for COVID, but to ignore that question.
All right, let's broaden this a little bit. We're talking Nets. We've got the Knicks on our air coming up in a little bit. Full disclosure, I grew up in northern New Jersey as a hardcore Net fan. I was one of 10 people in the building every night. I understand, and my parents at home who are hardcore Net fans understand. The landscape of New York will never shift, just like in LA, it will never shift away from the Lakers. But Isaiah, as somebody who still lives in New York and understands all about Knicks basketball here, what is the competition between these two franchises now that the Nets have a legit big three? And maybe you're old enough to remember 2 weeks ago when the Knicks were in first place, and you understand that Knicks fans had big hopes for this season.
Well, what I've come to understand and actually love about the Knicks fans is that they are passionate and they are loyal. And no matter how great the team is in Brooklyn, Knicks fans will watch, they will enjoy it, but will they ever become true fans of the Brooklyn Nets? That just won't happen. This is a fan base that, again, I've come to admire because throughout all the losing seasons that they've had and some that I've been a part of, their passion, their loyalty, they come to the game, they show up every night, and they root for their team, and it really is ingrained in their family. And there is a Knicks culture that I just don't think is going to go away. So Brooklyn and the Nets are in the process of developing theirs, but this Knicks fan base is rock steady.
Jared, well, first and foremost, I don't know how you're going to go home after what you just said today to New Jersey. How do you go back to the East Coast? But anyway, that's beyond.
I'm still on the East Coast.
But I'm saying, how are you going to go back there?
After
what you just said,
listen, it's true. It's all facts. I'm spitting facts here.
That's good. It's about truth now. I get
it.
But at the same time, I like to make the metaphor. Dallas Cowboys haven't won. I'm a Bears fan, so I can say this. It's heartbreak city being a Bears fan. But Dallas Cowboys are still America's team, and they have not won a Super Bowl.
Are they, though?
I see a lot of Dallas Cowboy hats in the airport in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because, there's not a lot of Falcons fans in Atlanta. But I use this example of I don't think it'll ever be New Jersey Nets town, but I like being the Grinch.
Right.
I like spoiling things, and I think KD, Kyrie, and James Harden like being the Grinch. And so what better way to go to a city that is normally a Knicks city and basically make the tabloids have to write a little bit about the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah. Well, Kyrie first has to show up and play. That's
Which
a big
he will.
part of it. We
will.
can't wait for that. What about the culture here that Tom Thibodeau is setting in New York? Now, listen, they got off to a great start, as I mentioned. You know, Knicks fans were going crazy, eyes of making the playoffs, sneaking into that 9 or 10 spot, and maybe in the play-in or something. Now they've hit a rough spot. But how does the culture, how does that balance out with they're still losing, but Tom Thibodeau's looking to go a different direction with how people mentally view the Knicks and how they view themselves?
Well, Thibodeau, I will say, I don't know if I was all 100% on board with this hire. I do believe that he is one of the few old school of thought coaches that are still left in the league. But honestly, his idea, his passion, the amount of defense that he's bringing to this franchise, they're playing with heart. And I think culture, people undervalue how important culture is within a franchise. And when you're able to have culture and to bring these guys along, you're seeing the way that Knicks are playing. But also, let's give a little credit to Julius Randle. I don't think a lot of people are talking about him, and they should. The amount of numbers he's putting up. You brought this point up. He's 11th in assists in the NBA, playing the 4 position. So I would like to give credit to Julius Randle and what he is doing this season. I mean, look, he's upped his points per game, almost 8 points per game. He's shooting 50% from the field. He's playing solid basketball. And so I think just giving him credit and the way they're playing, and with Tibbs really bringing that defensive philosophy into the Knicks, you know, you're seeing some success. Baby steps.
Well, Isaiah, you know, talk about culture, but you got to have some good players too.
Yeah, and talent is something that you know, Leon Rose and Tibbs, they're going to have to go and find, whether that be through trades, whether that be through free agency. You know, this is, you know, the 30 teams in the NBA. It really is about talent acquisition, and can you evaluate talent properly? And we see right across the bridge, the Brooklyn Nets have done a great job, not only in evaluating talent, but also acquiring talent. So when you talk about the culture, the one thing that I see that has happened, Candace, is that Tibbs and Randle, those two are made for each other because Tibbs is getting the best out of Randle. And we're seeing some things that Randle is capable of doing that he wasn't doing, you know, in prior years. So I believe there's a coach for every player. And sometimes you're fortunate enough to find that coach within your pro career early, and then sometimes you find it late. But I think Tibbs and Randle have found each other at the right time. I think Tibbs has given Randle a lot of confidence and a lot of playing time to flourish in his system.
But along with that, Zeke, you gotta be able to recruit to culture.
Yep.
And the Knicks are changing their culture so that maybe the
City Edition would be for this season. So it's been about a 3-year-long process. The idea of partnering with the King of State was an early idea that I had.
When the Hawks approached us about the MLK City Edition uniform concept, we were very intrigued. Whenever we have an opportunity, we try to move Dr. King from the history books and into the lives of younger generations.
Did you see this? That's the Pope blessing the MLK jerseys that the Atlanta Hawks will debut on Monday. Sign of the times, right? Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
You think he'll rock the jersey at all?
That would be the best
Ever, right?
picture.
Says Pope Francis on the back. How cool is that? Congratulations to the Hawks for making that happen. Part of what will be obviously a huge Monday around the NBA and right here on Turner Sports is we have 5 games for you, 2 on NBA TV. And we're joined now by Sean Powell, who joins Candace Parker and Isaiah Thomas. Sean just put together on NBA.com something you could check out right now on the website, an unbelievable Q&A with the head coach of the Atlanta Hawks. And for the average fan who may not have known, Sean, who Lloyd Pierce was prior to March, they certainly found out during the very difficult months of not only the pandemic, but social injustice, racial injustice, and it was unbelievable to see what he was able to do. I want to first go to this soundbite from Lloyd Pierce, who talked about why he was so compelled to have such a large voice and take action within his community.
When you're in Atlanta and you meet those type of people, you realize that it's different. You know, I grew up studying Dr. King and the civil rights movement and hearing about these people, but to actually meet them, to actually live in Atlanta, to actually know where Auburn Ave is and where the MLK Center is and Edgewood, these are the things you read about. These are the areas you read about. To be in that city, to know these people, to know what they fought for, to know that fight is still occurring, you feel the sense of responsibility to stand on their shoulders and to continue that work. When unified, the power of the voice grows exponentially, but it's not going to do so if it's just Black people marching, because then it's just the Black Lives Matter deal. And it's not going to do so if it's just Hispanics marching, because then it's a Hispanic issue. This is an issue of race in our country, and it affects everyone.
Lloyd Pierce, not an old man by any stretch of the imagination, but what he was able to do in this community of Atlanta, and Sean also, by really galvanizing the Coaches Association to do so much. I'm curious, in your conversation that you can read right now on NBA.com, what you learned from him about why he felt so strongly to do what he has done this past year.
Well, after he came to Atlanta to become the coach of the Hawks, the people that he mentioned were Andrew Young, John Lewis, and Hank Aaron. And he was inspired by them. And he said that if he ever had the chance, that he would use his voice to continue their work. He just didn't think that he would have to use his voice in the year 2020. But as you know, things happened. And so he spoke out against systemic racism, about police brutality. He was a keynote speaker at the March on Georgia. Also, he was sort of like front and center for the voter registration drive at State Farm Arena that the Hawks put in place. So he has decided to be active. He is a Black man of some stature in Atlanta, of all cities. And as you heard, he said he had a sense of responsibility. In this Q&A with him, I found him compelling, direct, and good.
Well, Lloyd Pierce, even before 2020, was seen taking his team to a number of museums. There were pictures of the Atlanta Hawks in D.C. at the African American Museum there. There are pictures of him taking his team around Atlanta to visit MLK's house and the different civil rights museums around here. How important it is as a coach, especially a coach of a young team, to take his athletes and show them more than just on the court things and expose them to things within their community.
Yeah, Candace, I'm glad you brought that up, because when we talk about coaches, they've lived more life experience than most players. You know, most players come into the NBA 19, 20, 21 years old. They don't have the life experiences, and this is before their generation. Maybe they weren't exposed to certain things. So a coach in that situation, like Lloyd Pierce was with the Hawks, he's sort of like a mentor. Yes, he's got to coach them about basketball and things like that, but he can also educate them about life. And he took it upon himself to do that. He thought that that was all a part of the process of being an NBA player. And particularly because most NBA rosters are made up of Black men, they have to have that sense of awareness. So he felt that his job was twofold. And particularly now, given what happened in 2020, it's very good for the players to be aware and realize that they do have a voice and to use that voice for positive social change.
You know, Sean, the importance of social change and education and coaching seems like it's all come together. And as an historian yourself, how important is it that these three tentacles connect during this period of time?
Well, the other thing you saw last summer was the mobilization of coaches. You had Lloyd Pierce and Doc Rivers sort of galvanizing the coaches in the NBA to also use their voice and to serve as role models, not only for their communities and their players, but also for their country. And so they took on those hot button issues. You saw Rick Carlisle speak out. You saw Stan Van Gundy speak out. Obviously, we know about Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr, but this is sort of like a much larger effort. And so the coaches mobilized, used their voice, and just to show that it's not just an issue that is of some concern to players, but it was also an issue of concern to coaches. And the good thing about the coaches is that it's sort of like a rainbow coalition. You just didn't have black coaches. You had white coaches also being just on the front line for this topic. And so to have those collective voices, it was just powerful. And Doc Rivers and Lloyd Pierce, they were just very satisfied by how all that worked out.
Sean, you've done great work yet again. We encourage people today, tomorrow, take the time to go to NBA.com, check out Sean's Q&A with Lloyd Pierce talking about his role in activism and his admiration for Martin Luther King. Sean, thanks so much for joining us. I want to shift gears to Isaiah now and get your thoughts, Isaiah, on your generation specifically. What did Martin Luther King mean to you, and how did it impact the way you lived your life?
You know, he was a constant and consistent reminder of our historical journey in America. And being declassified from the human race and then brought down to a lower race that symbolized color. When we talk black, white, mulatto, he did not want us to be classified in these racial categories, but to be elevated back to the human race, where there was only one race, and that was called human. As he said in his famous speech, the Negro finds himself a slave in his own land. That means that we have been consistently and constantly fighting, whether it be from Frederick Douglass, his writings, whether it be from W.E.B. Du Bois, his writings, John Henry Clark on the African writings, Drew Ali speaking about the Moorish history here in the United States of America. These things that were talked about were just reminders of who we were in the past and what our fight has been in this country. We did not want to be called Negro. We did not want to be called a color. Dr. Martin Luther King said he did not want to be judged by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. So our believing in this concept of race that did not exist, that we still govern, educate, and believe in this concept of race has put us all into racial categories of color, black, white, red, blue, yellow. And Sean Powell had, he had Nelson Mandela, a picture, a book, he just saw on the screen. I got Mandela sitting, behind me on the screen. This system of apartheid, a color-coded caste system of race, is what Martin Luther King and all the other historians have been fighting for, to get us out of these classifications and elevate us back to one race, and that's called the human race.
Zeke, we're pretty much a generation gap. I grew up watching you play, and I can relate to this just in terms of being an athlete. And I'm very into history. My parents made sure that I knew the history of our country, knew the history of our culture, knew the history of my sport. And to see a generation ago, guys like Bill Russell, you talk about Muhammad Ali, just individual athletes getting together and realizing things had to change. This was right around the time Martin Luther King said things had to change, and they did so in a peaceful way. And then now we're sitting and we're seeing the benefits of what they did today. Everything is not perfect. It's far from perfect. But now we have a generation of athletes that it's not one or two athletes getting up there. It's entire leagues getting up there and saying, we will not continue this. This is not okay. And standing in solidarity through what happened this summer in police brutality and on and on and on, and politics and different things like that. Athletes are a part of not just going out there and performing, but now being a part of our everyday life and speaking for those that don't have a voice. And that's what MLK to me and our generation represented. He spoke for so many people that did not have a voice. And obviously equality, I've sat down and done a number of projects with my daughter, and she cannot understand how people could see people in that way. And so as farther and farther we get away from MLK and what he's done, I hope that our country continues to, prove true what he believed in and continue to carry the message further for the future generation. Yeah. Because that's what it's about. It is about, Michelle Obama said it best, when they go low, we go higher. And that's what I feel as though Martin Luther King did consistently. Calm is a superpower. And he was able to hold it together and boycott and protest in a calm fashion that I don't know if many people could do that. And I think today we're using our voice and using our power. We've seen with Lloyd Pierce and the different LeBron James. We've seen the power when we're able to unite and stand together.
A lot of people have a voice. Few people, few organizations have used their voice as effectively as you and the WNBA has. So congratulations, and we really commend you and what the WNBA has done at the forefront of all of this.
Thank you.
Give Sean Powell's article a read on NBA.com and hope you'll join us.